Much simpler to forget. For when he sails to sea, he stows his favorite melodies. Oh, shipshape on a TDK-cassette. Oh, shipshape with a TDK-cassette.
How do, Martin?
Hello, Alan. I was sitting on a stool in my local pub the other night, and I sat on a peanut, and it went right up my bum. So I went to the barman, and I asked him what he could do about it. He said, eat a bar of chocolate.
How do, Jenny?
Hello, Alan. Someone was on last night asking about Nostradamus. I don't know, was anybody able to give him a reply?
No.
No. Well, I've recently read a bit about Nostradamus, and he was a 16th century prophet, for want of a better word.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
But he's quite fascinating in his predictions, but there's a lot of doubt because he wrote all these things in Old French, which I take to be the equivalent of Shakespearean. Also, he didn't know a lot about the inventions that were to come, and he also seems to have written it sort of like cryptic clues, a lot of it. What he does prophesy for the future is a bit bleak, but then are we to believe what he's, the other things that have come from the past? Like it says that he prophesied the Falklands War, but have they taken the event to fit what he's written? It's quite intriguing, really. I wish more people were into it because the books seem to be written rather hard going, and I think if more ordinary people were into reading about him, we might get books that were a little less hard to understand and a little bit more for everyday people.
And why not write one?
Oh, I'm not that much into it.
Well, if you get further into it, you might be able to write one.
Yeah, well, it is quite intriguing that, the Falklands War, it says that there will be a great naval battle, and it predicts that it will be Britain that's in it. And he also predicted that Hitler would come to power, and also Mussolini. And he talks about modern weapons and submarines, or at least what the people who've translated it take to mean submarines and things like that.
But of course Leonardo da Vinci predicted the submarine, as indeed he predicted the heliocopter. So that's no great big deal, is it?
No. He goes on to predict the downfall of the world in 1999. But whether that sort of coincides with the turn of the centuries, which all people long ago used to say something terrible will happen at the turn of the century, it's more a sort of myth. And also he doesn't exactly give precise dates. He gives clues, and he works in quadrants or something. And it's very difficult really to work out what he meant. But
it sounds like the kind of reading that you're best not starting.
Well, actually, no, you keep...
You end up with an headache.
Well, no, you keep going for more books. There was one that was quite good that was written before 1986, and it predicted someone who would rise to power and come to prominence on the 12th of December 1986, would be very instrumental in the future of the world. And I keep meaning to go and look at newspapers and find out what happened on the 12th of December last year.
No idea, but it could have been 6 months out, couldn't it? It could have been June this year.
It could have been anything. But he predicts things like earthquakes, which I think, we all know California is going to have an earthquake eventually because it's built on a fault. But he predicts things like the Yellow Peril. They're going to attack Scotland first, not England, and then into England, which we find a bit odd. And he talks about this drizzle from the sky, which I suppose he could mean acid rain.
He could do, I suppose, but all I can say is if the Yellow Peril, as you define it, attacks Scotland first, we should just let them have it. All right, love, thank you for telling us that. I'll do John.
Oh, hello, Alan. I'd like to challenge a statement you made last week when you said that at the end of the day, nobody goes to work except for money. I think by saying that you're denying that in some cases job satisfaction is more important than money.
I don't know anyone that works for only job satisfaction. Do you? I mean, I have a great...
I would say there was an example tonight on the Wogan show where a lady came on, a titled lady, who spent all her time in charity work, and I don't mean sort of just running charity bazaars or something like that. She actually worked with handicapped children, and she went on missionary work to places to Beirut, and she's now going to Ethiopia. Now she has most probably no need to work from the point of view of income, but she works.
I don't think she does work. That's her hobby.
Oh, well, all right. Let me
That's
take
her hobby. When she wants a day off, she has a day off.
All right. Well, let's take a note. Oh well, in that case, you're saying if anybody was free to have a day off when
No, I'm not saying that. You can accept that as a statement if you like, but that's extending it beyond what I'm saying. What I said was, it's not work. It isn't her occupation. It isn't her job. She just chooses to do it. It's a hobby. It's a very valuable service and all that, but it's just a hobby.
All right. Let me give you another example. What about the cases of people in the creative field? Where there is a compulsion, say, to write or to paint, and they don't work to do they don't.
Let me tell you, that is not an occupation either. As someone who frequently writes, it is not an occupation. I don't actually have a choice.
Well, Dr. Johnson said nobody but a blockhead writes except for money.
Dr. Johnson is probably right.
Yeah, So you say that nobody does any work without at the end of the day thinking of a monetary reward.
I don't think anybody does their job, in other words, works, for nothing. They do it for money.
Well,
a lot of people like me enjoy it immensely. A lot of people like me get benefit themselves from it, other than money. But I promise you, if the money stopped tomorrow, there wouldn't be a programme here.
Well, all right. Well, in that case, let's take the example of the Queen. The Queen does a tremendous amount of work. Now, she's the richest woman in the world. She has no need to do the work she does. I mean, a lot of the thing can't be pleasure for her. It must be work. Now, she is not working because at the end of the day she gets money from the civil list.
Well, she sure as hell makes sure she gets it. She even suggests via various officers that there should be more.
Well, all right, let me put it this way.
How can somebody negotiate their wages in one hand and in the other hand say the money doesn't matter? Can't do it. And she does fight for more money.
Yeah, so, well, I might concede on...
I don't care whether you will concede or not. The facts are there. You interpret them how you wish. But she fights for more money. If the money didn't matter, she wouldn't be doing.
Well, finally, then, can I ask if money is the only reason why people go why work?
No, I didn't say it was the only reason.
You said it would, at the end of the day.
I said we all work for money.
We all work for money. Yeah. Well,
it's a self-perpetuating statement.
Yeah. Well, can I just finally say that if you yourself suddenly came into a vast amount of money, you would cease to give us the benefit of your conversations on radio.
No, I wouldn't. But if they stopped paying me, no matter how much money I had, I wouldn't be doing it.
Oh, I see. Okay, Alan. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Ta-da. How do, Stephen? No, Stephen.
Aren't we just bombarded in these radio ads for cars? Prices, phone numbers, finance rates? Well, let's take a breather and let's hear a simple new message. Richard Rhodes for Nissan at Toll Bar Garage, Lancaster. Easy to remember, isn't it? Richard Rhodes for Nissan at Toll Bar Garage, Lancaster. Trips off the tongue, too. And it means new experience management for Nissan on the A6 just south of Lancaster. Now, repeat after me. Richard Rhodes for Nissan at Toll Bar Garage, Lancaster.
I'll do, Alice.
Do you mean Alex?
I'm sorry, I mean Alex.
Yeah, hello Alan. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a problem. My wife died in hospital yesterday of cystic fibrosis. And after the upset, I've been down to the Social Security, took the order books in and that, the invalidity pension and everything. I've been pushing it about for about the last 3 years in a wheelchair. Now, the next thing when I take the books in, they turn around and tell me I've got to sign on, straight away to get a job. But the thing is, I've only one leg myself, you see. And what I'm wondering is, the factories have to take so many disabled people on. Because I hope that's the case, because I want to get to work straight away if I can.
Well, the answer to that is legally, yes. There is a man called the Disabled Resettlement Officer, DRO, at a job centre, and that person's responsibility, amongst other things, is to ensure that employers above a certain number employ, I think the figure is 2% people who are registered disabled.
Yeah, I see. The thing is, I don't class myself disabled. I can work, I used to be a merchant sailor and all that. Obviously, I don't think I could do that anymore, but... So, if I went to the Citizens Advice Bureau, do you think they'd sort of put me onto this man?
Well, you needn't go to the Citizens Advice Bureau, just simply go to the job centre and ask them how you can get in touch with the DRO.
Okay,
all right?
DRO. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I'll do Grace.
Hello. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Grace.
Yeah. Well, I want to know if you could put me right in one thing. It's about, I'm talking about Catholics and Protestants. And you hear all the talk about in Ireland, about Catholics and Protestants. But you hear it in Scotland and England too. But in England, it starts from the Queen. She she gets upset when it comes to any of her family going with a Catholic.
She doesn't get upset when any of her family go with a Catholic, but there is, if I remember correctly, a constitutional requirement that any person who wishes to accede to the throne is not permitted to be married to a Catholic. I don't know that that's the case, but I think it is. Now, that's not the Queen's doing, that's the doing of the law.
Well, that's royalty, isn't it?
Well, obviously, if it involves the Queen, there's a fair chance of it being royalty.
Well, it is then. Well, it starts from there then.
Well, I don't know that it starts from there. The Queen is the head of the Church of England, which I always thought ought to be God, but that's neither here nor there. The Queen's the head, and so it would be wrong for a Roman Catholic to be the head of the Church of England, wouldn't you have thought? Let us, just for the sake of it, let us assume that Prince Charles married Princess Astrid, or whatever her name was, the Catholic from abroad, and decided to convert to his wife's faith. We would then have a Roman Catholic king, and as king, he was simultaneously head of the Church of England. Now, how can you have a Catholic as head of the Church of England? It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make sense.
So they've got to be a member of the. They've got to be a member of the faith that they are going to be the head of.
It was just I was wondering why Catholics are not in royalty.
Well, there are Catholics in royalty. Indeed, I think the Kents are Roman Catholic. I'm not sure, but one of that lot is. And they still perform their civic duties, as it were. They're just going to have difficulty, should we wipe out 90% of the royal family overnight, they're going to have difficulty becoming king. That's all. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
I'll do Paul.
I'll do Alan.
Yes?
There was a couple of lads on the other night talking about role-playing games.
Yes?
And they said that it involved...
We know what they said.
Oh, yeah, but I just want to point out that they're completely wrong.
Thank you. I'll do Alan.
I'll do Alan. I'd like to ask you, do you know anything about the legalities in purchasing a second-hand car?
And what do you mean by the legalities?
If you purchase a, say, second-hand car, and it's bought as seen, does that stand up to anything? If you know what I mean.
It depends on where you bought it from.
No, from a garage.
If you buy a motor vehicle from a garage, that motor vehicle has to be fit for the purpose for which it was purchased, which means they've got to be able to drive it.
Yeah. So if it's got, say, 11 months MOT and it shouldn't have, it's then not fit.
What do you mean, if it's got 11 months MOT and it shouldn't have?
Well, let's say there's 11 months MOT on the vehicle, and when you get it home, you find out that through a week the inner wing of the suspension top's dropping off.
If you have in front of you a copy of the MOT test certificate, you will find that there is an endorsement thereon that says this must not be taken as evidence of the state of the vehicle at the time of purchase.
Yes. So really...
So it's irrelevant. The MOT is nothing to go by.
Okay then, thanks a lot, Alan.
Is that right? How do line 8, who no doubt Rodney will inform me about someday, should he ever get his finger out. Is that the same as 7, who was also Alan, is it, Rodney? Or have you... Another Alan, very good. How do Alan?
Alan.
Yes.
How do Alan? Is Alan the compulsive gambler?
I thought it was when I heard the voice. What
Did you,
comedy did
yeah?
you for?
I've got a little poem. Terence Newt wore a giant boot, ran down over his head. He kept it there with his ears and his hair until the day he was dead. But when his wife removed the boot, she discovered to her horror it was not the head of Terence Newt, but 3 other men, Tom Deft, an apprentice butcher, Cyril Lunger, mechanic, and Orgoff Mangrain, a dentist.
Leaves a little bit tired in the rhyme area, wouldn't you say?
Well, I'm working on that.
Yes, you've some way to go, but keep it up, Alan, as you said. Good night.
Good night.
It's very nearly time for the nudes. If you want to join us, we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes' time.
The Midnight News, this is Alan King. A Palestinian newspaper cartoonist is critically ill on a life support machine tonight after he was shot down in broad daylight in a London street. Ali Naji Awad al-Adami was hit in the head by a gunshot fired at point-blank range by a black man in a blue jacket. As the victim fell bleeding to the ground, his attacker strolled away and melted into rush-hour crowds. Mr. al-Adami was hit outside the office of a Kuwaiti newspaper opposed to Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini, and police fear he could be the victim of fanatical pro-Khomeini groups. Mr. al-Adami was rushed to Chelsea St. Stephen's Hospital, where another victim of terrorism, Iranian ex-minister Amir Parviz, is recovering from injuries inflicted when his car was blown up at the weekend. As Scotland Yard anti-terrorist detectives combed the scene of tonight's shooting for clues, police speculated that both men have fallen victims to the same coordinated campaign. A neighbour who heard the shots, Andre Muller, says he did his best to help the victim.
Well, I came out and looked, and there was a man lying in the street, and they said he's been shot. So I just checked his pulse, checked he was breathing, tried to stop the blood from his face, and there was blood pouring out of his mouth. And then the policeman came along, and then the ambulance came.
2 car bombs have exploded in Londonderry tonight, causing extensive damage. The vehicles were left outside 2 hotels, one in the centre of the city, the other in the suburbs. Warnings had been given, and there are no reports of anyone being injured. The case against a lifeguard captain accused of smuggling £500,000 worth of hashish into Sweden has been postponed at the last minute. Captain Simon Haywood was due to stand trial tomorrow after being arrested in March with the drugs hidden in a car he'd borrowed from his brother. From Sweden, Lindsay Taylor.
In a statement, police will only say the postponement's because further investigations are required to clarify the English captain's possible guilt. Ironically, it came just as Captain Haywood's mother, Hazel, was trying unsuccessfully to visit her son in solitary confinement. She says she's convinced he's innocent.
I know everything that's been going on, and I know him very well, and I'm not only speaking as a mother. I know his character extremely well, and I know him to be innocent. I believe in justice, and I know he will come home. He's not guilty.
Arriving with Mrs. Haywood today was North Hendon MP John Gorst. He believes the case against the lifeguard's captain should be dismissed. Lindsay Taylor, IRN, Sweden.
An American professor who claims he needs to smoke cannabis to counter a disease which threatens his sight is cutting short his holiday in Britain. Bob Rendell's California doctors have prescribed 10 joints a day to keep the disease glaucoma at bay. But Bob has found that the drug is illegal in Britain, so he's reluctantly heading for home.
Essentially, the Foreign Secretary has invited me to see Britain and go blind, which I don't think is a very appealing prospect.
That's what happens if you don't take marijuana. You go blind.
That's right. I will go blind slowly. I mean, I'm not going to go blind in 0.2 of a second, but over a period of days, I would certainly suffer some damage to my vision.
Independent Radio News.
The box all over, we're second to none. Look as we Whether it's a new Vauxhall, a Bedford van or a quality used car, you'll be glad you chose Looker's Levers. There's not a lot we don't know about Vauxhall Opel, so put your trust in Looker's J&S Lever of Blackburn. Call 51191.
Looker's Levers, where you're number one. On a sign by a house, there's a message and a name you should know. The message says for sale, and the name shows the way to move home. The name is White Gates, and that means action!
Tomorrow's kind of estate agent works fast to get results. With Whitegates, Red Rose sellers get red-hot service, and you pay nothing until the property is sold.
When the sign says White Gates, you're on the way to a sale.
The Red Rose Advertiser. It's a breakfast show, a morning market. It's a what's on diary and a blast from Beswick. It's the paper that's on your wavelength. The Red Rose Advertiser. And when it comes through your front door, look inside, because all that's fit to be read is in the Red Rose Advertiser.
Ring him if you dare. Allan Beswick, the late night show.
And the telephone number, if you wish to join us on the phone in, is Preston 561,000. It's exactly 5 minutes past midnight. Welcome to Thursday.
Right through the
Howdy, Carl.
Hello, Darren. How you doing, my old Prater Sack? I'd like to talk tonight about young people involved in motorsport, if I may. Would that be okay?
So far, yeah.
Yes. Well, some years ago I took part in a motorsport called motocross, and I'm quite amazed at the youth that takes part in this sport at the present time. Kiddies of 5 and 6 years old are allowed to race around on motorbikes, which on the road they'd be something with the speed and power of something like a 125cc motorbike, and they're allowed to race around some motocross track at breathtaking speeds and endanger their lives. Well, it's quite astounding, honestly. You'd only realise.
What proportion of injuries are there?
Pardon?
What proportion of injuries are there?
Whilst I was taking part in the sport, I packed
What proportion of injuries are there now?
well, every meeting, usually, there's at least one broken limb.
How does that compare with the adult equivalent of the same sport?
Well, we watch at an adult meeting down
Just
the road.
an answer will do. I don't need your history of your life. Just an answer.
Just an answer.
How does it compare? Is that more damaging
don't you think
or
it's
less?
far worse?
Will you just answer the question? I don't know whether it's worse, for crying out loud. I've just bloody well asked you, haven't I, you god? I don't know whether it's worse. You still haven't...
I'm telling you.
Well, you're not telling me, actually. You're asking me. You
Oh,
said
I'm
it is
not
though...
alright. Yeah.
No, let's start again,
Right,
Carl.
we'll start again.
Try to have the conversation. I'll step down some way, and we'll have the conversation at your
My
intellect level. I did try to treat you as an ordinary, reasonably intelligent human being. That has failed. We'll come down to your level.
Okey-doke.
So, do you think that proportionately there are more or less accidents resulting in serious injury in children's motocross or adults motocross? More or less proportionately?
I'd say more proportionately.
Many more?
Not many more, but with far more
1%,
serious
2%,
consequences.
1%, 2%, 10%, 30%, 90%, 5%.
Just slightly more.
1%.
Yeah.
1% more.
But it's the injuries to the younger people, isn't it?
Well, let
You
me say
think
to you.
more.
Let me say to you that an injury to a young person is less traumatic than to an older person.
Yes, but if you see a young kid writhing around in pain with a broken leg, I mean, he's just...
Well, how many times have you seen a young kid riding around in pain with a broken leg?
I meant writhing, you know. In
Writhing.
pain. Writhing.
Well, just because the injury the child sustains is painful to it, doesn't mean to say we have to remove the risk of it achieving it. As someone who writhed around in considerable pain with a broken leg when I fell off my ordinary pedal cycle, I can simply say that it wasn't a lot of fun, but I would have preferred that than to have cycling banned.
Yes, but it's the motorsport bit of it, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, these
well, the
motorbikes-
engine doesn't actually make it any worse, does it? If you've broken your leg, the fact that the thing you fell off had an engine doesn't really matter. What you're bothered about is your broken
young
leg.
kids are allowed to ride at such a young age, and they don't really know what's going on.
Well, it would seem to me, Carl, that on the evidence of your own mouth, they do know as well as the adult what's going on, because they
A lot of these kids are just pushed into it.
Carl,
What?
listen. There's no good interrupting. You haven't the intellect to deflect me, so you might as well just wait until I've finished.
That's bullshit, that.
Well, it may well be, but the evidence is there. Carl, you seem to be saying that the children are less competent at riding these motorcycles than the adults. Is that the case?
Yes.
Then how come, Carl, you tell me, how come they only have 1% more accidents? If they are that much less competent.
No, they have more accidents, but the fatal injuries are.
Carl,
only
I gave
more.
you a very, very specific question which you clearly did not understand. I said to you, resulting in serious injury, and you said 1% different. Are you now telling me there's only 1% difference in serious injury, but there's considerably more than 1% difference in death? How many children have died in that past time this year?
I'd say one, just perhaps two at the most.
2.
Yeah.
It seems a bit harsh to ban something because 2 people have died doing it.
Well, I mean.
How many take part, do you think? Over a year.
Over a year?
A
few 100,000.
A few 100,000 and 2 have died.
Yeah.
Well, that is dangerous,
It's
isn't
two,
it?
isn't it, though?
More than 2 die boxing.
You don't get young kids boxing, do you? Dying.
Tell that to the parents of the corpses. Good night.
Well, that-
How do? Christine.
I do, Alan. I'm ringing up really about the ambulance service and the injustice that's done to it. The government, for some unknown reason, will not class the ambulance service as an emergency service. There was a minister a few years ago, I've forgotten his name, now said that the ambulance service were nothing but glorified taxi drivers. But how would he feel if a taxi driver came to scrape him up off the floor after a road traffic accident?
Well, Jean, we can all make decisions with our emotions, but we still have to examine them. Ambulance driving is an important role in our society, but is it a dangerous job?
Well, I mean...
Is it or isn't it?
Well, I think it is.
Why?
Well, a few years ago, my husband, I must say he's an ambulance man, was on what I class as a very dangerous job, and that was the Abbystead disaster.
Indeed.
Whereby they were going into...
Indeed, but you cite only one case. Every time a fireman goes out, he goes out on a dangerous job.
Yeah, but sure.
It's going into burning buildings. That's his living. Your husband does a job that has occasions of danger.
Yeah, but
Let me
surely
tell you.
if they put people's lives in their hands, it should be classed as an emergency service.
It
You
is
were my
classed.
taxi
It is
driver.
classed as an emergency service. It is an emergency service. The minister didn't suggest it wasn't an emergency service.
Yes, it is.
No, he didn't. What did he say? Give us the quote again.
Oh, I can't give you the quote now.
Well, you
because
gave it me you gave me a few seconds ago. Tell me what you said before.
Well, it said then it was essential service.
Well, no, tell me what you said a few moments ago. That's all.
On which bit?
You quoted the minister a few moments ago. You said what the minister said a couple of years ago. Tell me again what he said.
I just said it didn't class it as an emergency service.
Well, it clearly is an emergency service, but it is not a dangerous emergency service. It has moments of danger, but then so does being a plumber. But it's not.
Then again, so does being a policeman.
Indeed, so does being a policeman. But the job of a policeman is a perpetually dangerous one. Perpetually dangerous. He is at constant risk from assault, well, you've only got to read the papers. Every day policemen get assaulted. Every single day.
No,
at the moment,
the ambulance men.
At any given moment in any police force's lifetime, a fairly substantial proportion of those officers are off sick as a result of assaults on their person. That is not the case for ambulance men.
Yeah, but I mean, my husband has also been a policeman.
Well, we're not interested in what your husband's done, love. We can't really convince... Christine, we can't really convince the minister to change his mind on the basis of your husband's employment record. The truth is that the job of ambulanceman is not as dangerous as that of fireman, nor is it as dangerous as that of policeman.
Okay, Alan, so now then we come into the fact of it's not dangerous. Okay, it's not. They're not going to get stabbed, as you say, or go into a dangerous situation. But how about the AIDS situation where they may contact AIDS?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Christine, I would say to you that there is no medical evidence that ambulance-men are at any appreciable increased risk of contracting AIDS.
Oh, but they are.
Oh, but they are. Give me the evidence. Christine, your opinion doesn't matter. I want evidence.
No.
I want evidence.
They have been told themselves, and they have different meetings where they have to be told about the AIDS virus.
Yes, of course they do, but they also have to be told about new splints and new other things. What I'm saying to you, Christine, is that they are not in any appreciably increased danger of suffering as a result of AIDS. Tell me, if it is so prevalent, if it is so dangerous, how many have suffered the problem so far? Give me evidence. 2. How many ambulance-men are there?
Oh, well,
how many ambulance-men are there?
I haven't a clue.
You haven't a clue? Well, the number 2 doesn't mean a great deal compared to the literally thousands and thousands of ambulance men. So they're not in that appreciable danger. They're certainly not in the danger that a policeman and a fireman are in. Yes, they are in slightly, and I mean slightly more danger than they were before, but they are still not in any real danger. And that is why they don't get the kind of wages that those who are in that real danger get.
I'm not on about the wages, Alan.
What are you on about then?
I would just like the government to put them on an emergency basis.
What do you mean, an emergency basis?
So that they're not classed as an emergency service.
So all you want the government to do is to say, ambulance men, you're now an emergency service. Is that all right? And they'll all say, yippee, that's great. We all feel good. What a silly idea. How do, Roger? Goodbye, Roger. How do, Stella?
Hello, Alan.
Hello.
Hi, I want to talk about the gay line that's set up in the Manchester area.
Yes.
The MP for Worsley is making a real to-do that the gay line is spreading AIDS and promiscuity. You know, I really don't think that that's very feasible. I mean, does actual gay not gay lines, just ordinary date lines in heterosexual lives spread promiscuity? I've never heard anybody say that it does.
Well, I have heard people say that it does. There have been a considerable number of complaints about date lines of all different kinds, gay and heterosexual. Quite a number have said it helps perpetuate promiscuity.
Yeah, but not MPs asking questions, not front page of the evening papers and all over the television, not the way that they're going on about it of this gay line.
They're certainly a little more vitriolic, if you like, about their complaints about the gay line, but that's because MPs are so paranoid about gays because there's so many in the House of Commons and they get so frightened. Heaven knows why.
Well,
there's the truth. There's the truth of it. There is the truth of it. There are an awful lot. I'm not criticising them for their status, but there are an awful lot of gay MPs who are still in the closet.
Oh yeah, I'm not knocking that. But I just think that it's very wrong when, I mean, particularly in the Northwest, there's very few outlets for gays. There's very few meeting places, and the only times that people can meet somebody who is of their own sexuality is through something like Gay Line.
But the truth is that such lines are able to be used by those who are sexually promiscuous to satisfy their promiscuity, and if those people are homosexually promiscuous, they are in considerably greater risk of contracting AIDS than if they are heterosexually promiscuous.
Well,
considerably greater. And
I hate to actually say you're wrong on that, but you are, because lesbians are in the very lowest category of spreading AIDS.
Indeed, I was talking. Okay,
yeah,
I suppose I
gay
should
men.
have. I should have qualified it by saying gay men. Yes, that is absolutely the case. You are
Yeah, so
totally and utterly correct. However, I don't honestly think the MP is whinging about lesbians using the gay line. I think the MP is probably going on about men, because the term gay, whilst it does apply universally, it is generally used for male homosexuality, and the term lesbian is actually used openly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
But the
that is
problem
why I tackled the sense gay line on a basis of male homosexuality. I do accept that lesbians are the lowest level of risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before I go, you know last night's joke that woman tried to make that mentioned gypsies, which
Yes.
was quite... Could I just give you the end of it that has nothing wrong at all?
Go on.
It's, does your lover wear earrings? And she says, yes, I bought him a gold pair
That's
for his
right.
birthday. He says, well, tell him to take them back. They weren't gold, they were copper.
Yes, I know the joke. All right. Thank you very much. Good night. Good night. And we won't ask why you know it. How do Jean?
Hello.
Yes.
I'd like to talk about standards of behaviour of today.
Go on then.
Now, it's my opinion that they're very, very low at the moment.
What are you comparing it with, Stella?
Well,
Jean, sorry.
Gee.
What are you comparing?
I've had it on before.
Yeah. What are you comparing it with?
Well, in my younger days,
When was your younger days?
quite some time ago now.
Well, quite some time ago.
Yeah.
We're going to have to have it. When?
Well, let me see, I'm now, over 60, so I'm going back to when I was 15, 16.
When was
age
that?
Group,
Sorry?
that age group.
So when was that? What year were you 16?
1939, I was
1939. Isn't that interesting? A year later, what were the young men, your ex-boyfriends, your ex-schoolmates, what were they doing?
horrible to say, but in the forces,
What were they doing, though?
fighting.
They were spending their days attempting to kill other young men.
Yeah, I'm not talking on those lines.
You are. You're saying the standard of behaviour.
Yes, I'm
Well, the
talking...
young men of today aren't out machine
No, they're
gunning.
not.
They aren't out machine gunning other young men.
Let me... Now,
Some of them get in the odd
let's
fight.
clarify that point.
Well, it doesn't need clarifying. There it
Well,
is.
in my opinion, it does.
Well, let us hear your opinion.
Well, my opinion is that, right, I agree with what you say. I mean, I was in the war, I was sort of making bombs, so that was just as bad as what they were doing.
Yes.
You can call it that. We had to do it. You had no choice. And neither did they, in actual effect. I mean, a lot of them did volunteer. Now, what I'm saying, like standards of behaviour, I mean, I could walk the streets then. I could walk the streets in the blackout. And I had no fear. I'm not saying things didn't happen. Things did happen. But I now will not walk out when it's dark on my own.
Well, and I don't blame you.
I mean, I have a dog, and that poor old dog has to go down my back garden. No way do I take my dog for a walk.
Fine.
at night time.
Jean, I fully agree that what was done during those years was necessary in terms of our government's decisions.
Yeah.
Whether those decisions were
Yeah,
right or
well,
wrong
you
isn't for
can't
this
blame the
occasion.
standards of behaviour on the people
hold it.
themselves.
No, you're not actually getting the point of what I was
sorry.
saying.
Yeah.
All that happened during the war was the goalposts were moved.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I mean. If a young man, 19 years of age, went today to France, met a German and shot him, he'd be in trouble, wouldn't he?
Yes.
He was told to do it 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That was his duty for his country. So what I'm saying is that the goalposts have been moved. You're comparing young men of today who predominantly have no job, no chance of getting anywhere, awful expectations purveyed upon them and forced upon them by television and radio and the like,
Oh, yes.
So their level of disappointment is greater. There was no worry about unemployment in your day. For heaven's sake, Jean, you were busy making bombs. There was no worry about unemployment. There was no worry.
Before 19...
There was no worry. You picked the era, not me.
Yeah,
there was no worry. There was no
19...
worry about things such as no money. There was no major expectation of the individual. All he wanted to do was survive. So his expectations were low. His achievements were high. Therefore, there was no frustration. That was during the war. Let us go back a bit. Let us go back to the earlier 30s. The time when the government had to employ soldiers with live ammunition to stop riots in the streets, to stop food being stolen. So they were no better behaved. So the truth is, nothing's changed. What has changed, in terms of violence, is that the violence is less than it was in the war, for sure. However, what has also changed is it is now more cowardly. In terms of those who wish to steal, are attacking people such as yourself, who are not as readily able or well able to defend themselves. That's all that's changed.
Yes, but see, what I also think is, and I think an awful lot of it is lack of respect, lack of discipline. I mean, don't know where.
But think about it, Jean. Think about it. If somebody failed you, just you, an individual now, if somebody failed you, would you respect them?
No, and this is where the whole crunch is. Now, this is what it is.
But the youth of today have been failed.
They
And do you know who they...
failed,
But they've been failed by your generation.
Look,
It's your generation.
I'm not disputing that fact, because I found, from my point of view, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of young people, I've worked with a lot of young people, and I've always treated them with respect.
Well, we're not talking about you, Jean. We're not talking about you, and we're not talking about those young people. You were talking generally, so also am I. Your generation has got this world into the state it's in. It is a mess, and you ask for respect from the young people. The young people don't want to respect you. The reason they don't want to respect you is because your generation does not damn well deserve it.
Well, I'm afraid I must plead guilty to that.
Of course you must. And I must plead guilty to those coming behind me, because my generation doesn't deserve it either. We're the ones that were scrapping in Vietnam, for crying out loud.
You see, I think somewhere or other the whole thing has got to turn around, and we're going to go back to a sort of a more, what's the correct word, not the Victorian era kind of thing, but that sort of behaviour before anything is really done, because...
To be honest, Jean, I think we will get that. I think the children...
It's got to turn around. It can't go on like this.
I think the children of the 80s, when they become the parents of the children of the 90s and the century, I think they will reintroduce what's been lacking in our children for a long time, and that is respect at home.
Yes.
Now, that's where it starts. You had it... My generation had it, but unfortunately our parents, my parents, your generation, were saying, oh, well, you know, the war's over, let's give them some freedom, and we went through the horrendous 60s.
Yeah.
And the kids of today are the children of the 60s.
Yeah. I mean, I've got two sons, and, I mean, I brought them up on my own, virtually, from 1963, yeah, that's right. And it wasn't easy, and I've always sort of tried to teach them respect, and they turned out reasonably good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in that way, and I think this is where it lies. I mean, I agree with what you say, that my generation is to blame a lot, because you do, I mean, I was left on my own, and I tended to think, well, I gave my kids a bit more leeway, sort of thing, because I was on my own with them, because I was sort of, they were deprived of a father, and that way. So, okay, I mean, faults could have been with me there. But, I mean, today, I think that, you know, something's definitely, I mean, they talk about statistics and everything else, Alan, but really and truly, you know, I mean, as I say, I won't go out on my own at night. I mean, I sort of, you know, always take care, I've got a dog, and that is much of the company is for protection.
Okay, love. Thank you for your call.
Okay, Alan.
Bye-bye. How do, Jim?
Hello, Alan. I'd like a bit of information on a record I can't really get hold of. 3 weeks ago, wife went away on holiday.
Just tell me what the record is.
Right, it was brought out on 16th December 1978.
Tell me what the record is.
Ramalama Ding Dong from Rocky Sharp and the Replays.
The only place you'll get it now is on a compilation. I don't know which one, but you'll have to go wading through all the compilation records at your local record library and see if you can find it. How do, Jeff?
How do, Alan? I'd like to talk to you, if I may, about motorcycle helmets. I believe that the government's legislation for the compulsory wearing of motorcycle helmets is wrong.
Why?
I believe that people should have personal freedom to take the risk on the road and not be legislated by the government.
Do you think that people should have the personal freedom to say, we're not scraping his brains back and pouring him into his head and keeping him for the rest of his dying days?
Absolutely so, yeah.
So you're happy to have somebody say, well, I won't wear my crash helmet, but if I fall off my motorbike and smash my brains out, you just let me starve?
Yeah.
Then you're an idiot. How do, John?
How do?
Yep.
Carry on that conversation about motorbikes, motocross. There's hardly any accidents anywhere. I myself are in
Are we talking about children or adults?
Children. There's more in adults than there is in children. I myself are in the experts, and there's hardly any accidents there, so...
You ride in the experts?
Yeah.
What does that mean? You don't sound like a child.
Well, I'm not.
So when we're talking about children, the fact that you ride really doesn't matter?
Well, no, but I've watched them and observed them, and that is not so.
What is not so?
The accidents that the young lad was on about before.
Are you saying that there are none?
Yes.
Never?
Occasionally, but not every meeting.
Well, he said they were occasional. No, he didn't. He said that a broken limb is sustained at each meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
And are you saying that is not the case?
There is no such thing as that.
What do you mean there's no such thing as that? That suggests that
It
it's
never happens every meeting. It's every
Well, that's,
4 or 5
I'm sorry, that's not a
meetings, if
sensible
that.
statement. It never happens every meeting. It hasn't happened at any of the ones you've been at, is it?
Yeah, well...
Is that the case? Has it?
A couple of times,
A couple of
yes.
times. How many meetings have you witnessed of children?
About 7 or 8.
7 or 8?
Yes.
And it's happened twice?
Not twice, no.
Well, you said a couple of times. What did you mean? Did you mean one?